When 16-year-old Cheryl Fergeson walked into Conroe High School that Saturday morning, she had no idea she would never walk out alive. What happened next would shock a small Texas town and expose a justice system so broken that an innocent man would spend 10 years on death row.
In September 1980, as Clarence Brantley sat in jail charged with the rape and murder of 16-year-old Cheryl Fergeson,
while the real killers walked free. This is not just a story about murder. This is a story about how racism, corruption, and lies can destroy lives. It's about how the truth can be buried for years, and how justice can fail so completely that it becomes injustice itself. Cheryl Fergeson was excited as she rushed around her house that Saturday morning. At just 16 years old, she had been chosen as the manager for her high school volleyball team. Today was special. It was her first day in this new role, and the team was traveling over an hour away for an important scrimmage. The blonde teenager from Belleville High School grabbed her things and hurried to catch the team bus. They were headed to Conroe High School, located just north of Houston, Texas. It had only been 2 weeks since her birthday, and Cheryl was looking forward to starting her junior year when school began in August. The bus ride was filled with chatter and excitement. The girls were pumped up for their game, and Cheryl felt proud to be part of something bigger than herself. She had no way of knowing that this ordinary Saturday would become the last day of her life. When the Belleville team arrived at Conroe High School, everything seemed normal. The building was quiet since it was a weekend, but several maintenance workers were around finishing up projects before the new school year started. At exactly 9:15 in the morning, Cheryl stepped off the bus and dropped her belongings in the gymnasium. The game was about to begin, but first, she needed to use the bathroom. She asked some janitors in the hallway for directions, and they pointed her toward the nearest restroom. As Cheryl walked up the stairs to the landing where the bathroom was located, one of the janitors began talking to her and showing her the way. She seemed like any normal teenager, polite, hurried, and focused on getting back to her team. But as she reached the bathroom door, something terrible happened. Cheryl felt a strong hand grab her arm tightly. In that moment, her world changed forever. By 9:30, Cheryl's coach was getting worried. The game was supposed to start, but their team manager had not returned from the bathroom. This was not like Cheryl at all. She was responsible and always where she was supposed to be. Several girls from the team walked around the school looking for her. They checked the bathroom, the hallways, and even outside the building, but there was no sign of Cheryl anywhere. The coach tried to stay calm, but a feeling of dread was growing in her stomach. The volleyball game continued for an hour, but everyone was distracted. Where could Cheryl have gone? She would never just leave without telling anyone. Something was very wrong. By 11 o'clock in the morning, the coach had organized a full search of the school. Parents, school employees, and even some local police officers joined in. They called out Cheryl's name through every hallway and checked every room they could access. But still, there was no trace of the missing teenager. While everyone was searching for Cheryl, 5 janitors had been working throughout the morning at Conroe High School. Clarence Brantley was the supervisor, a 29-year-old black man who took his job seriously. He was working with 4 other men that Saturday to get the school ready for the new year. Clarence had not even known there was a volleyball game happening that day. At 9:15, he went into the gym to open windows and doors so it would not get too hot for the players. Meanwhile, Henry Peace was polishing the floor in the teacher's lounge. 3 other janitors, John Sessom, Gary Ackerman, and Sam Martinez, were in the cafeteria setting up tables and chairs. It seemed like a normal work day for all of them. Around 9:45, Clarence walked past the cafeteria carrying an armload of toilet paper. He told the three men to head over to the vocational building, and he would come unlock it in just a minute. As he started up the stairs, Gary called out that there was a girl in the bathroom. Clarence told him it was no problem since he was going to the boys' bathroom anyway. After dropping off the toilet paper, he went to his office for a quick break and a cigarette while listening to the radio. Clarence was trying to keep his crew busy until lunch so they could earn a full day's pay. The search for Cheryl continued for hours. Police officers, parents, and school staff looked everywhere they could think of. The volleyball team was devastated. Their friend had simply vanished. Clarence and Henry Peace decided to help with the search. They had finished their work and wanted to do whatever they could to find the missing girl. Together, they began checking areas of the school that others might have missed. That's when they decided to look in the auditorium loft, a storage area above the stage where theater props were kept. It was not a place most people would think to check, but they wanted to be thorough. Clarence opened the door to the loft and looked around. At first, everything seemed normal. But then he noticed something behind a piece of plywood that made his blood run cold. There, hidden from view, was Cheryl Fergeson's body. She was completely naked except for one sock, and she was not breathing. The sight was so shocking that Clarence could barely process what he was seeing. He immediately called for the police and then sat down in the auditorium, stunned. Somehow, a terrible crime had happened just feet away from where they had been working, and they had no idea. When the police arrived, they quickly secured the scene. An autopsy would later reveal that Cheryl had been both raped and strangled. The brutality of the crime shocked everyone involved in the investigation. Henry Peace and Clarence Brandley were taken to the police station to give statements about their day. They answered every question honestly and even provided blood samples to help with the investigation. Both men also agreed to take lie detector tests, which they passed. Clarence understood that finding the body made him a suspect, but he was not worried. He knew he was innocent, and he believed the truth would come out quickly. He wanted nothing more than for Cheryl's real killer to be caught. But what Clarence did not know was that some people had already decided he was guilty. As the only black man among the 5 janitors, he became the primary focus of the investigation almost immediately. The racist attitudes of some investigators would soon become clear. Just a few days after the murder, Clarence Brandley was arrested. He was completely shocked. This had to be a terrible mistake. He was innocent, and once the real investigation was complete, surely they would realize their error and release him. But that's not what happened. Instead of looking for the real killers, investigators focused all their attention on building a case against Clarence. Evidence that might have pointed to other suspects was ignored or lost. The racism in the investigation was obvious and sickening. Despite having no real evidence against him, Clarence was convicted and sentenced to death. An innocent man was now sitting on death row for a crime he did not commit. While Clarence Brandley was fighting for his life in prison, the real story of what happened to Cheryl Fergeson was slowly coming to light. It would take years, but eventually the truth could not stay hidden. Gary Ackerman had been nervous about working that Saturday, but he needed the overtime money. His girlfriend was pregnant, and every dollar counted. He was not particularly close with the other janitors, but he was friendly with James Robinson, who had recently quit his job at the school. James had been hanging around the school that day, even though he no longer worked there. He and Gary had gotten into trouble together before, and Gary knew that James brought out the worst in him. But he was not smart enough to stay away from his bad influence. That morning, Gary had just finished unstacking chairs in the cafeteria when he saw a blonde teenager walking toward them. Cheryl asked where the nearest bathroom was located, so Gary jumped up to show her the way. As they walked up the staircase together, Gary tried to make conversation, but Cheryl seemed focused on getting to the bathroom and back to her team. Gary felt an urge growing inside him, something dark and dangerous that he should have fought against. Suddenly, James Robinson appeared, jogging up the stairs to join them. When Cheryl reached the bathroom door, James grabbed her arm and pushed her inside. Her screams filled the hallway. What happened next in that bathroom was unspeakable. Cheryl pleaded and screamed for the men to let her go. Her cries were loud enough that John Sessom could hear them from the cafeteria below. He saw the men on the stairway with her, but could not believe something terrible was actually happening. Instead of helping, John turned back to his work and hoped everything would be fine. This decision would haunt him for years to come. For 20 minutes, Gary Ackerman and James Robinson committed horrible crimes against an innocent 16-year-old girl. When it was over, Cheryl Fergeson was dead. Gary left the bathroom acting calm. He joined John and Sam in the cafeteria, but inside he was panicking. He knew what he had just done was terrible. At 9:45, Clarence came down the hall with toilet paper. Gary quickly called out, "There's a girl in there." Clarence said it was fine since he was going to the boys' bathroom. Gary went with the others to the vocational building. He was anxious, worried that Clarence might find Cheryl's body. When Clarence unlocked the building, Gary made an excuse about getting a Coke and went back to check the bathroom. It was empty. Outside, he saw James at the dumpster throwing away a bag with Cheryl's clothes. They talked quickly, then James left. Gary returned to the others, keeping his horrible secret. When work ended at 11 o'clock, Gary rode home with John Sessom. During the ride, Gary threatened John to forget what he had seen. He told John they had been working together all morning and that was their story. At home, Gary was upset. His girlfriend noticed something was wrong. He told her and her father that Cheryl's clothes were in the school dumpster. This proved Gary knew details only the killer would know. Police wouldn't find the clothes for days. On Monday, all the janitors gave statements. They said they saw a girl go to the bathroom and Clarence went upstairs with toilet paper. They didn't mention the screams or violence. John stayed quiet because of Gary's threats. This silence helped send an innocent man to death row. While Gary and James went free, Clarence faced a nightmare of legal battles. He endured trials, a mistrial, and a false conviction that put him on death row. For years, he came within days of execution while lawyers fought to prove he was innocent. Police got tips right away, including information from Gary's girlfriend's father, but they ignored anything that didn't support their case against Clarence. They had decided he was guilty and made the evidence fit. The racism was obvious. Clarence was treated differently from day one because he was black. The white janitors who actually committed the crime were barely investigated. After years of fighting, Clarence got a break. James Robinson's ex-girlfriend, Brenda, came forward with shocking news. Brenda was 16 and pregnant when James confessed to her after the murder. He came home that day and said he had killed a girl at the school. Then he packed up and left town, abandoning her. At first, Brenda thought James was making excuses for leaving. But 6 years later, when she heard about Clarence's case on the news, she realized James was telling the truth. Her decision to speak up led to a new investigation. Private investigators found that Gary's family had tried to give information about his involvement 5 years earlier, but police had ignored them. When Gary was questioned again, the truth poured out.
What did you hear from her?
She was just hollering no.
Did you see what it was that James was doing to her, which made her holler no?
When he grabbed her.
John Sessom also finally told the truth.
He went up and was talking to her. And I just had in my mind that something going wrong.
He had stayed silent for years because of Gary's threats, but couldn't live with the guilt anymore. James was questioned again, too. When he took a lie detector test, it showed he was lying every time he claimed to be innocent. After failing repeatedly, James said something chilling. "I don't know. I'm just not sure. I could have done it and forgot. I don't remember." With all these confessions and new evidence, it was clear Clarence had been telling the truth all along. He was completely innocent. In 1987, Clarence got a new trial. After more legal battles, charges were dropped in 1990. He walked out of prison a free man, but had lost 10 years of his life. He was robbed of time with his 5 children, his career, and his reputation. The worst part is what happened to the real killers. Despite all the confessions and evidence, Gary and James were never charged with any crime. By the time the truth came out, most physical evidence was destroyed or lost. Nothing was left for DNA testing. The only blood evidence showed the killer had type A blood, which matched Gary and James, but not Clarence. After Clarence's release, the district attorney shocked everyone. Despite having confessions, witnesses, and clear proof of Clarence's innocence, the DA decided not to charge Gary or James. The official reason was lack of evidence, but everyone knew the truth. The system that was eager to convict an innocent black man was suddenly reluctant to prosecute the white men who actually committed the crime. Cheryl's family was devastated. They had lost their daughter horribly, and her killers would never face justice. The system failed them completely. Gary and James got away with rape and murder. They destroyed a young girl's life, ruined an innocent man's life, and traumatized a community. They faced no consequences. The case became famous worldwide as an example of how badly justice can fail. It showed how racism can blind investigators and how innocent people can be destroyed by a system meant to protect them. Clarence tried to rebuild his life after release, but the damage was done. He lost everything: his job, reputation, years with family, and faith in the system. He tried to sue for compensation, but was largely unsuccessful. In 2018, Clarence died, still fighting for recognition and compensation. His family continues seeking justice for the years he lost. Meanwhile, Gary and James lived as free men. They watched their children grow up and enjoyed freedoms they had stolen from both Cheryl and Clarence. One disturbing aspect is how many people knew the truth but stayed silent. John heard Cheryl's screams but turned away instead of helping. Gary's girlfriend and her father knew he was involved but took years to speak up. James's ex-girlfriend knew he was a killer but didn't come forward until an innocent man nearly faced execution. Each person had the power to prevent injustice, but fear, threats, and indifference kept them quiet. Their silence let an innocent man suffer while killers walked free. The Clarence Brandley case shows every way a justice system can fail. From the start, investigators decided guilt based on race, not evidence. They ignored witnesses, lost evidence, and focused only on building a case against who they'd already decided was responsible. Courts failed by allowing illegal procedures. Appeals failed by taking years to address obvious problems. The DA's office failed by refusing to prosecute real killers, even with overwhelming evidence. Gary and James escaped justice because of their skin color and system corruption. They manipulated witnesses, destroyed evidence, and lied to protect themselves. Gary threatened John into silence, willing to let an innocent man die to save himself. James confessed to his girlfriend, then acted suspicious during questioning. But the system that quickly convicted Clarence wouldn't pursue the real killer. Both men knew the racist system would protect them while destroying Clarence. They were right. Cheryl's family lived with unimaginable pain. They lost their daughter violently, then watched the system fail her repeatedly. First, they believed justice was served when Clarence was convicted. But when truth emerged, they realized their daughter's real killers walked free. For Cheryl's parents, the pain was doubled. They lost their child and unknowingly supported convicting an innocent man. Learning the truth, they had to live knowing the system failed everyone. Today, Gary and James have never faced consequences. They took away a girl's future, destroyed an innocent man's life, and traumatized a community. Yet they live as free men. Clarence spent his final years trying to clear his name completely. He died in 2018, still fighting for recognition of the injustice he suffered. The case remains a powerful reminder of what happens when prejudice and corruption control our legal system. Subscribe to our channel to watch more real true crime incidents so you could get awareness. Comment about this incident and pray for Cheryl Fergeson and Clarence Brandley.